Firstly, the question arises, is the Jesus of the Bible a real person? The answer is simply yes. His skin complexion was darker due to where he was born. This is no great secret. However, the next information I'm going to share is not so widely known, but completely sourced and verified. Jesus, Yahushua, was born 7 BC, also 747 AUC. AUC is after the founding of the great city of Rome. He died in AD 73, aged 80, in Kashmir, Srinagar, India. Jesus was also from the order of Melchizedek, who is a priest king of Salem. He was married to Mary Magdalene, also known as Miriam. She was born AD 3, died AD 63, aged 60, at what is now known as Saint Baume, southern France. They had 3 children: Tamar, born AD 33, Jesus II, the Justus, born AD 37, and Josephus Haramotheo, who was the Bishop of Saros, born AD 44. Mary Magdalene was a high priestess of Dan, and Mary's mother, Eucharia, Mary's father, Matthew Ciro, was a Jarius priest and Levi of Alphaeus. In dealing with Jesus' birth, there are, however, 2 different dates given in the Bible, one in the Gospel of Matthew and 2 in the Gospel of Luke. But contrary, these are both correct. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus was born in the reign of King Herod. Herod died in 4 BC. Standard Concordance Bibles and history books imply Jesus was born in around 5 BC, but his physical birth was actually 7 BC. In the Gospel of Luke, it states that Jesus was born not BC but AD 6. This, however, is his community birth, as he is Jewish, and they have a second birth at 13, the becoming of a man. Luke says Jesus was born when Cyrenius, who was governor of Syria. The same year, Emperor Augustus implemented a national census, AD 6, which Joseph and Mary went to be a part of. These are both recorded in the Jewish annals. He was originally taken away to Egypt as an infant to escape being killed by Herod. According to the writings of the Coptic Church, which are the oldest Christians, he travelled in Egypt to Mustarad, Sebennytos, Wadi el-Natern and also Cairo, where there is a tree of the Virgin Mary. The original lasted till 1890 and died. The tree that's there now has grown in the place of the original. The next mention of Jesus is in the Bible, is of him aged 12, preaching in the temple in Jerusalem. I need to mention that the dates in the Jewish calendar are slightly different, meaning when someone has a birthday, it is officially from the evening, when we in the West see it as starting from the morning, hence the possible dating difference recorded. This is something never discussed. Why a boy aged 12, let's say 13, is not just preaching, but being listened to. Did he attend one of Egypt's powerful mystery schools? If so, what was he told and taught? And how different are the ancient Egyptians compared to the people living in Jerusalem? The Bible next returns when Jesus is 30. So after leaving the temple, where did he journey? Why he left, we don't know. Possibly he became a threat. But again, we don't know. But what evidence do we have of where he did go? What we do know, which I'll cover, is, along with his family, he travelled across one of the trade routes, at that time known as the Silk Road. We know of one of the first written accounts from the Bhavishya Purana, a Vedic text that dates back to 3000 BC, mentions that King Shalavan met Jesus 10 miles northeast of Srinagar, who went by the name Isha Messiah. Isha was dressed in white robes, and when asked by the king who he was, he replied he was the Son of God, born from a virgin, his mother Mary. Mary in Indian is also known as Kumari. Isha Messiah is another form of the word Jesus the Messiah. Born of a virgin simply meant born before marriage. We also have the account of Nicholas Notovich, a Russian traveller who journeyed to India through Afghanistan in the late 19th century, where at Hemis Monastery in Ladakh, the monks told him of a prophet known as Isha, a man of Jewish origin who lived in Palestine and Egypt, which they held the records of in their scrolls. After returning from Ladakh, Notovich decided to write and publish a book on this called The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ. This made quite a sale at the time. However, Professor Max Muller from Oxford University completely rejected Notovich's claim and managed to send 2 army officers to Hemis Monastery to firstly find out if Notovich was even there, and secondly if the monks indeed had the accounts. The army officers were told by the monks they had never heard of Notovich, and also they had no scroll pertaining to the life of Jesus in India. There were 3 more who visited Hemis Monastery. Swami Abhadananda in 1922, where he crossed the Himalayas on foot and reached Tibet, where he studied Tibetan Buddhism and Buddhist philosophy. He claimed to have studied the scrolls kept at the monastery outlining the life of Jesus outside of Palestine. He wrote a book called Journey into Kashmir and Tibet. Swami Abhadananda was also a direct disciple of Ramakrishna and also started the Vedanta Society in New York. The second person was Nicholas Roerich, who was a Russian painter, writer, archaeologist, theosophist, philosopher, and a very high public figure in Russia. Interested in spiritual practices, he won the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times. He was also an avid reader of the Vedantist essays of Ramakrishna. He also visited the Hemis Monastery and was also told by the monks of the life Jesus had outside of Palestine as well. Thirdly, Gloria Gask in 1939 also visited Hemes Monastery, and like Nicholas Roerich, was also shown and told what was written on the scrolls pertaining to Jesus' life outside of Palestine. The monk, who was also the chief librarian to the thousands of scrolls held at the monastery, let Gloria and her friend Kaspari take a picture of him holding one of the scrolls containing the information about Jesus. What we have are 4 accounts that Jesus was known to have travelled outside of Palestine by the Buddhist monks. Even if we deduct Notovich's account, we are still left with 3 very prominent and also religious people. The question being, would the monks lie to the 2 army officers so as to avoid troubles? For instance, them coming back and saying, under Her Majesty's government, we are authorised to gain possession of the scrolls, etc. With the British Empire being a conquering force, yes, the monks probably would. Would they lie to others who held religion in high esteem and upheld the same morals? No, they probably wouldn't. Now, going back to the accounts written in the Bible, from Preaching in the Temple, age 12, the next account is from Luke, in which Jesus is now 30 years old. The Bible then talks about the sign of Jonah, which is 3 days, as in the story of Jonah and the whale, being in there for 3 days before being released. Jesus is then crucified and taken down from the cross with the power that Joseph of Arimathea had, being one of the heads of the Sanhedrin, which was the Jewish council, and also close to Pilate, probably because Joseph is known to have been trading in tin across the trading routes, as travel was a commonplace back then. Hence Joseph of Arimathea founded Glastonbury Abbey. So now we have the differences when it comes to being historical. Normally the Romans would leave the person being crucified to remain on the cross till they died. This could take up to at least as long as 5 days. Jesus was taken down from the cross on the same day. It is also known that he was given something to drink whilst he was on the cross, which may well have acted as a form of general anaesthetic, hence him not responding when the soldier pushed a spear into his side. So after being treated and cared for at least 3 days, Luke says in the Bible, as they were saying these things, he himself stood in their midst. He said to them, "Peace to you," but they were startled and terrified and thought they were seeing a ghost. "Why are you troubled?" he asked them. "And why do your doubts arise in your hearts? Look at my hands and my feet, that it is myself. Touch me and see, because a ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you can see I have." Having said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. Through other sources, it's known that Jesus travelled back to Kashmir to avoid the Romans knowing that he was still alive. Matthew states that Jesus saying, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." This is talking about the lost tribes of Israel, and why we have later found the origin of the Bene Israel people, found originally from Kashmir, India, as looked into genetically from the Tel Aviv University. We next have the clues of the marriage of Jesus to Mary Magdalene. A Coptic script dated from the 4th century was found to reference the words, "Jesus said to them, 'My wife In the Gospel of Philip, it is written, towards the end of verse 64, the wisdom is called the barren, the mother, and the companion of Mary Magdalene, for he loved her more than the disciples. He kissed her on her mouth many times. The rest of the disciples said to him, why do you love her more than all of us? Even during the 2nd century with the early Christians, there was doubts on the doctrine of the crucifixion. Bishop of Irenaeus documents that John the Evangelist knew Jesus as an old man. Irenaeus writing within 80 years of the death of John the Evangelist. John the Evangelist was the original leading member of the 12 apostles. What we have are many books that outline Jesus' life outside of Palestine, before and after his crucifixion, including the accounts of many others. It is also widely believed that he finally returned to Kashmir, with his final resting place being at the Rosabul tomb in Srinagar. His tomb has undergone many changes throughout the years. Thankfully, we have these photos from 1975. This one showing his grave inside the sarcophagus, the wooden cross, and the stone boulder within the sarcophagus. Also within the tomb, next to the sarcophagus, are the footprints of Jesus, showing the crucifixion marks on his feet, created by the sculptor as a sign of who's buried there. The Rosabul shrine is now off limits to tourists and is considered a dangerous place to visit due to troubles in the area of Srinagar.